I'm here to make a very short video on John Cena's current heel run. Before I start, it reminds me so much of 1999, Triple H's interview when he talked about Madison Square Garden, how he was the one who got all the punishment for it. If you don't remember, Kevin Nash and Scott Hall left for WCW. They couldn't be punished. Shawn Michaels was the WWE champion, so he couldn't be punished. So they punished Triple H by giving him a match with the Ultimate Warrior, getting buried, and basically being a worthless talent for, I don't even remember how long. It was a great interview where, to be honest, the distinction between truth and wrestling basically became super blurred. You can't tell whether it's Triple H, the wrestler, talking, or Hunter, the person, talking. And that's because it's a mixture of both of them. Both of them have a reason to be angry. So he's not playing a character, but at the same time, he is. It's kind of like when the two of them came to life and were brought together into this one majestic point where fiction and non-fiction basically get so blurred you can't tell which one it is. And watching John Cena's current heel run, dude, it reminds me a lot of like that Triple H in that interview, where basically he's using real events, real things, such as the fans turning on him, hating him all those years, thinking John Cena sucked, when all he ever did was carry the product the best he could. He was always a great wrestler. He was always like one of the top talents ever. While his start at the top wasn't the best, he was the only person who accommodated to the top so well that he stayed there for, to be honest, far longer than Hogan and Stone Cold ever could be at the top. Hell, even Bruno Sammartino, which he's a great wrestler, I would say he's probably the only one that outlasted John Cena. Shout out to him. I don't even know a lot about him. I want to watch some of his stuff later, but let's go on. Basically, this John Cena is unhappy and pissed off about the way the fans treated him for years, and now he's finally being allowed to let it all out. What I love about this John Cena is that this is not John Cena the wrestler or John Cena the person. It's like the Triple H thing. It's a perfect blend between both of them. You don't know what's fiction and what's non-fiction coming out of his mouth, because everything is basically so blurred. This is what I like about wrestling, when it becomes basically that. Although I do have limits, such as the Edge and Matt Hardy and Lita thing. I won't talk about that, but that shit was nasty. But anyways, I like it to this point, but not. If you don't know about that, if you want to be depressed, watch it. But yeah, the whole point is John Cena's pissed off, he's leaving. He's mad that nobody nearly as good as him is taking over. And instead, everyone is taking like what scraps he left for them, and you know, they're not getting the same pressure as he did, because WWE before was John Cena was the product, and then John Cena was the product, and every other wrestler just existed. But now it's like WWE is the product, and they just have a bunch of wrestlers that do different things. Like before, for Hogan and Stone Cold, Hogan and Stone Cold were basically the product. Everyone else was just side characters in that person's product. And even though wrestling was great, I'm not saying that to discredit all the other wrestlers, but in reality, those guys were the faces, those guys were the commercial men, those guys were at the top, the pinnacle. Now that John Cena's leaving, even though Cody Rhodes will be the face, it won't be the same, because a lot of the lower level wrestlers are just at a level where they don't need a face to carry them anymore. And that's because WWE has just gained enough popularity to not need to force such pressure on the face of the WWE like they did with John Cena. And I guess that's my interpretation of why he's so angry and pissed off. Now let's get a little into his career. You know, he started out as a rapper who just battled people, was a heel. Dude, that shit was fun. Until 2004. Basically, he went from that to John Cena the face, which he had to struggle a little bit getting into the spot. But I'd say after about 2 or 3 years, he basically became the representation of it. Especially the tragedy that happened with Chris No, not Jericho. The other Chris. He basically needed to become the face of the company. He needed to set a good example for everybody because wrestling had so much stuff. His death, the steroid trial, all that stuff. Basically, wrestling was being attacked every front. So John Cena had to adapt and was forced to become the man that he basically is today. A guy with so much pressure on him that he had to hold the company over for all those years because he was the most positive example. From all the things he granted in Make-A-Wish to all his spectacular wrestling matches to the lack of talent in around 2008, 9, 10, 12, where he basically fought Randy Orton endlessly because everyone else was just mid-carders, basically. And that was mostly Vince McMahon's fault rather than the wrestlers' fault, because they had a lot of great talent. Oh yeah, and the women's division was fucking dead. Like, after Lita and Beth Phoenix left, dude, that shit was dead. Anyways, back to this. WWE was basically a mediocre product with John Cena as one of the few things that had people coming back. Like, at that point, it was basically him, The Undertaker, like Shawn Michaels' final match. You know, it was like things like that. CM Punk, Daniel Bryan, that had people coming back. But the biggest constant was always John Cena. Even if he wasn't the biggest draw at the time, he was always near it. When CM Punk was the hottest thing, John Cena was the second hottest thing. Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker were the front of it, but John Cena was the second place again. When Daniel Bryan won the World Heavyweight Championship and The Undertaker lost his streak, John Cena was the third main thing there, which is a constant. It's not that he was always the main focus, but he was always top 5 in the focus no matter what, consistently. Which is, he was always reliable, consistent, great in the ring, great on the mic. And even though his moveset's a little bit limited, to be honest, so was Hogan's and so was Austin's. So I can't really blame him on that. The biggest difference was that Hogan had too much time at the top, so people just started hating him because of that, while Austin had the perfect amount of time where he was always at his prime, and he retired before he could really get stale to the fans. And while John Cena tried to fix that by incorporating a few extra wrestling moves, he just wasn't that good at them. But he did try to update his moveset even if people didn't like it that much. But his mic work, like, heavily carried him so well. Like, John Cena was basically the spokesperson and the face of, hey, we're a good company. Hey, we're doing everything we can to try and fix all our misdeeds of the past. Hey, we care about wrestlers. Hey, we care about children and everyone else outside of this company. And we want to make the world a better place, even if our product is seen as violent and potentially influential on kids in a negative way. And basically all that pressure finally just, you know, it got too much to the point where all the water spills out of the pot. And that's what I think John Cena's character is right now. Basically all that water is like basically at the top, about to spill but not ready. But then after I think 2014, he basically had a huge losing streak where he was still active, but he was becoming less and less active every year. And he had a lot more losses than wins at that time. He was no longer Super Cena. He was just John Cena, the guy who, like, still is a main eventer, but is on a slow decline, where now he's losing matches that he normally would always win no matter what. He's basically trying to convince me, you, and himself that he still belongs up there. But what he realized is that he doesn't have the same hunger and drive as he used to that kept him at the very top. And now too many new people are going up and managing to get wins against him that normally would never happen. So because of that, his character became desperate and scared to hold on to what his position still is at the very top. He finally realized that he's not invincible. He's not the greatest anymore. And now, his spot, he continuously has to fight to stay there. Unlike before where he was always at the top and nobody could match him. And through all that fighting and fighting, he became more and more desperate to win over and over. Even though the losses of his kept getting bigger and bigger, he realized that I'm not invincible anymore. I need to do something to hold my position the best I can. So he became desperate enough to join forces with The Rock and turn on the fans. And that's my personal interpretation on him. He was never the best guy for the best position. He was the guy who adapted to the position and then became the best guy. And then stayed at the top the longest he possibly could until he just couldn't do it every single day. And the less he came, the more and more losses he had, which made him more and more desperate over time. And that to me is one of the greatest wrestling stories ever, especially because I lived through it. Like, I always hear of the greatness of Hogan and Stone Cold. I've even seen their matches, but I never lived through it to really experience how great it was. Which is why John Cena is my version of them. Even if I personally think Stone Cold is the most important figure in WWE, just because it would not exist if he wasn't there, and it would be like WCW something. I still think John Cena is overall the greatest story in the company, and the second most important face, only behind Austin's very crucial role of keeping the company afloat and not making Vince McMahon have to shut it down. But yeah, and in real life, he's a great guy, great wrestler. One of the few celebrities I actually like in terms of them as a person and celebrity. He's a genuinely nice guy. Like, I wouldn't consider him the nicest person on the planet, but he's, in terms of celebrities, he's like one of the nicest people on earth. With literally probably only being behind maybe Keanu Reeves or Jimmy Carter. Only because those guys are like a little farther in nice and kindness. But like, his position is nothing to scoff at, because he's still nicer than like 99% of everyone else on the planet. But yeah, I can't wait to see his last match, and I'm definitely gonna buy that red shirt he had with the red hat too. And yeah, I would like to put videos on this, but the last time I did, WWE goddamn nuked my channel, and about 80% of my last John Cena video I made got horribly destroyed. So yeah, that's the reason why I'm not using clips in this one. But yeah, I'm not risking being horribly nuked again by WWE. So instead I'll use like still images, and that's pretty much it. And yeah, that's also, just do whatever you want.